Hi, I'm Barry Ostrowski. At RWJ Barnabas Health, we believe that everyone needs to be informed about the important healthcare issues affecting their lives. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been provided by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Investors Bank, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community, United Airlines, the Fidelco Group, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General. Promotional support provided by AM 970 The Answer and by New Jersey Globe.
Welcome to Think Tank. I'm Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the Agnes Ferris NJTV studio in beautiful Newark, New Jersey. It is my honor on Think Tank to welcome Dr. Joe Rene Formicola, professor of political science at Seton University, author, you'll see the cover of that book, author of the book, Papal Policies on Clerical Sexual Abuse, God Weeps. Doctor, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, I want to make it clear that Dr. Formicola is speaking for herself and not for any particular university. To be clear. Why did you get interested in this topic?
My main area of concern and interest is church-state relations. And when the first big case broke in Boston, my concern was, well, what is this going to mean now in Boston, the most Irish Catholic city in America? How is it going to impact the way the church and the city of Boston and the state of Massachusetts are going to interact with each other?
How did it?
It was really critical because for the first time, you had civil investigations of the Archdiocese of Boston, which included things like deposing the cardinal archbishop. I mean, this is unbelievable that you would bring the cardinal in and ask him questions, and then the answers would be made public, that there would be questions about his leadership. You bring in his entire team and ask them, you know, why have you hid records? Why have you covered up things? So this was the first time that the church was really put on the defensive about the way clerical sexual abuse was being treated in their diocese.
I'm curious about this. As a Catholic, and actually taping this program Easter week, it'll air after. For those of us who have struggled with this, and we ask the question why, not just why did it happen, bad enough, why does it seem that the church hierarchy has not been more responsive and in some ways has made it worse by saying we'll handle it ourselves? Is that an oversimplification?
I don't think so. That's what I look at in my new book, and I look at the three popes who have dealt with this question. So when it first became public and the word reached the Vatican, John Paul was the person who was the Pope, and he was truly flummoxed by the entire situation. He was never able to grasp either the gravity or the scope of the problem for a variety of reasons. He was a man of a different time, a different culture, and you know, as he looked for causes and reasons, he blamed it on things like, oh, you know, the permissive sexual culture in the United States, or this is the
whatever.
Whatever.
Well, what about Pope Francis? Pope Francis came in with a clear message that things were going to change. What has happened?
I think Pope Francis has sent mixed messages as to how he thinks it should be handled and how critical he thinks it is. You know, every pope has a political agenda and a religious agenda.
They're not the same?
Not necessarily. One is based on the other. The political agenda is always based on some theological principle. So when you look at geopolitical relations and you talk about something like social justice or human rights, it's based on some sort of a theological principle.
That's right.
Okay? So when you look at Pope Francis, you see that he is attempting to change certain theological principles and move them from the right more to the left or to the center, which then maybe changes different political views on things. And
how successful has he been? By the way, I was speaking to Dr. Formicola, who has written a book, Papal Policies on Clerical Sexual Abuse, God Weeps. How successful has the Pope been?
In my own mind, I would say that he has not lived up to expectations or what people thought he would do, or the powers that he has to be able to do so many more things than he's done. I think the biggest mistake thus far has really been the Papal Synod.
Explain that to folks.
Okay, so the Papal Synod was a meeting called by the Pope, and its purpose was to bring in the heads of all of the Catholic conferences around the world.
That was an opportunity.
That's right.
To do what?
To attempt to put into place some sort of a systematic way to deal with clerical sexual abuse.
And what happened?
Nothing.
Because?
Okay? Because there was no real, I think there was a will on the part of some of the members of the hierarchy, but not all the members of the hierarchy. When you talk about bishops, you're talking about their functions, their roles, their powers, et cetera. And if suddenly they feel that that's going to be diminished, this is like asking someone to watch after themselves, and you really can't have that.
You make it sound like they couldn't do it. Weren't capable of doing it.
I don't know that they necessarily were.
Okay. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Stay right there, Doctor. Recently, on our sister program, State of Affairs, we had a conversation with Senator Joseph Vitale, who has been working in this area for a long time, introduced legislation to change the statute of limitations on these cases, et cetera, et cetera. Take a look at the clip.
The goal is to establish that there has been, over decades, not just a pattern, but institutional abuse and a cover-up by certain bishops over time. And that abuse has not stopped. We still hear about cases today. I think the church has done a better job trying to weed out bad actors. But when you rape a child, there is no excuse. There's no justification for that, of course. And now, many years later, when they're adults, they have no remedy other than to sue their abuser or their rapist and the institution that may have enabled that abuse in court.
Doctor, let me ask you this. We listened to the senator. 5 dioceses in the state. They released 188 names of priests who were credibly accused of sexual abuse. Of the 188 names, 100 of them are dead. The rest of them, many of them not active.
Right.
What is the significance of that list, and what message does it send about how serious the church is about dealing with this?
Well, I think it's very important that people who have been abused in the past know at least that someone recognizes that the things they may have said to friends or to family that were never really taken seriously.
Even if the priest who did it was dead?
Yes, because at least it says you were right and what you said was true. Because people carry around a tremendous amount of guilt. They've been isolated, and this is one way by which they can be vindicated. Now, there's no real vindication for anyone who's been sexually abused. I mean, you can talk about statutes of limitations, you can talk about financial monies, et cetera. But what you're talking about is taking away the innocence of a child.
But the church has fought the statute of limitations expansion. Because?
Yes. Because they have reached a point, obviously, where the longer the statute of limitations goes, it means that the more people can come
You make it sound
forward.
like it's an economic issue.
I think some of it is, very definitely. Well, I mean, when you look at the fact that so many dioceses have declared bankruptcy across the United States, we haven't had that yet in New Jersey, but that could possibly be in the future.
By the way, say that again. Japan is actually is just announced investigating in their country. I want to clarify something. Cardinal Joseph Tobin, we have asked and will continue to ask to be on any one of our programs, on State of Affairs, Think Tank, one-on-one. He was recently scheduled for this particular taping. Because it was Holy Week, he couldn't be with us. We will ask again. The Archdiocese has argued that we are wrong in saying that they have opted not to participate. We'll continue to ask, and hopefully the Cardinal will find the time to be with us. But I just want to thank you, Doctor, for joining us. And one more time, your book is called Papal Policies on Clerical Sexual Abuse, God Weeps. Thank you for joining us on Think Tank, Dr. Formicola. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more Think Tank with Steve Adubato programs and to listen to Think Tank with Steve Adubato, the podcast, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, Ph.D. and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Think Tank is pleased to welcome Christian Kane, who is the founder of Toms River Field of Dreams. Good to see you, Christian.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You have a fascinating story and a fascinating life, and you're making a huge difference. Your son, Gavin, is 8 years of age, and when he was 19 months old, what happened?
As I was waiting to make
actually looking at Gavin as you're talking.
Yeah, he's a great kid. As I was waiting to make a turn into my high school, a loaded beer truck ran through us. And
you're a teacher?
Yeah, at High School North in Toms River.
A beer truck?
A beer truck going out on its route. And when it was all said and done, it was a scene that I would never want any other parent to ever see. And Gavin suffered a traumatic brain injury, a right front temporal stroke, and basically, you know, he was breathless when I took him out of the car, when I was able to get him out of the car.
So the idea for this Field of Dreams comes from that experience?
Comes from that experience as Gavin started to get better. When doctors said, listen, you may need to find him a home. And we found him a home, which is ours. We decided to build a playground in our backyard. And then Gavin wanted to play with his other friends. And that's when the whole thing started, when we went to public playgrounds that were quote unquote all-inclusive.
Right.
We couldn't get him to go down the slide. We couldn't fit him onto swings. We couldn't get him to other places. And that's where this Field of Dreams then started.
You say what to yourself?
That this isn't fair. That
and
this,
your wife?
And with my wife, I mean, on March of 2017, she went to an all-inclusive playground. Try to get Gavin on one of those big red swings. She's 100 pounds. He's 70. She couldn't get him on, and she was looking around. It was one of those beautiful days in March, and there were plenty of moms and dads around with their kids running around. She was looking for help. Parents would look up from their phones, stare at her, and put her head back down.
Nobody helped?
Nobody helped. And that's where it started. When she came home and she said, listen, I know you want to build this baseball field for special needs leagues, but it's got to be more than that. It's got to be a place where people who are like Gavin, they need to be able to feel typical, and they don't need to be stared at, and they need to be able to have the same kind of fun that every other child can enjoy. But then it grew.
Sure, let's do this. I want you to actually describe what we're looking at, if we could. Okay. Now, what is that?
Now, that's the state-of-the-art playground. That's a playground not only for children, but it's also for a grandmother who suffered a stroke, who used to take care of her 3 grandchildren, but now she's not grandma anymore because they can't go to her house because she's in a wheelchair and she can't move around. Well, guess what? Grandma now can go down a slide, you know, in her wheelchair. Grandma can now play the way she used to play.
Totally inclusive. Totally inclusive.
Grandma can go down the zip line. You know, kids who are typical in high school can now get 50 hours of community service to come to the complex for this thing to live and breathe.
Keep talking. Take a look at that one.
That's still, now, once again, the other side.
Is that a different angle?
Yeah, it's just a different angle. On the right-hand side is the zip line. Every different type of swing that you could imagine for a person with a special need of any type of age. Same thing, that's double-wide playground set, so 2 people in wheelchairs can go down. If you have volunteers, a person can go up to their wheelchair, get out of their wheelchair, go down a slide, and a volunteer through a pulley system, get their wheelchair back down. And now they're not being stared at. They can just have as much fun as everyone else. And that's how this thing then started to grow.
You know, you're an educator, right?
Yes.
And you and I were talking before about the challenges of raising money. And the folks at Investors told us about this.
Yes.
They're involved.
Yes.
RWJ Barnabas Health.
Yes.
A big supporter of public broadcasting. They're involved. But you also talked about Jersey Mike's.
Yes.
I actually, if I'm not mistaken, we actually interviewed the CEO of Jersey Mike's one time.
Peter Cancro.
Yeah.
Great guy.
How did you know him?
No.
Well, how'd you get him to fund this?
So this is, as a teacher, I'm always thinking of how to be, you know, that different teacher. How do you get kids motivated? So
how to be an innovator.
Yeah. And with this one was simple. Found out where his headquarters were, which is in Manasquan, New Jersey. I live in Toms River. As I was investigating about Jersey Mike's, I Googled his picture, read his story. I actually drive to his main office.
You stalked him.
I did. Because I need $2.2 million, Steve. It's as simple as that. I need to build this.
This is 3-acre complex.
Yes.
So you need $2.2 million. You've got to get this done.
I raised 1.9 in over 2 years just by knocking on doors.
So what happens when you see the CEO of Jersey Mike's? I
find him and I said, listen, I need your attention for 5 minutes. He says, go ahead. I tell him my life story just like I'm telling you my life story. He's heading over to California. Now, this is on a Thursday. He's headed over to California. He says, let me think about it. I'll give you a text on Sunday when I take the red eye back. I said, great. Somewhere around 11:30 at night on Sunday, hey, it's Peter. I'm in. 50,000. Great. Thank you.
Oh my God.
And that's that's the hard part.
How gratifying.
Phenomenal. But it won't be gratifying enough until I open the gates on, in October of this year.
So October of 19 is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
We're taping this in the spring of 19. It's going to happen in the fall of 19.
Yeah.
What's going to happen there? Tell folks what's going to look like.
Here we go. You walk in. There's bocce courts and basketball courts. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can play with typical people. As you move along, you can play in the playground, where every type of equipment, if you're in a wheelchair, you can be able to accessorize any of the rides. As you are walking around the walking path, there are different fitness stations along the ride so that you can rehabilitate your knee or your hip or your whatever replacement that you got. As you move on, there's a snack shack. In the snack shack, there's two, you ready for this? 2 special needs bathrooms.
Wow.
The Yankees don't have it, the Mets don't have it, Citi Field, no one has it.
You
know why?
have it.
When we have it, when you are a caretaker, you can bring your loved one into a special needs bathroom. There'll be a lift there, and they can basically adjust so that you can get changed. If I go to a bathroom at Yankee Stadium, I have to put Gavin on the floor. How does a place like Yankee Stadium not have bathrooms like a mom and pop little place like I do have?
Before I let you out of here, 30 seconds. Should this be a national model, and what would it take?
It's going to be a national model. I'm working with Game Time, and Game Time's a national playground equipment company. They want this thing built yesterday. The reason why is once this thing's built, you're going to have people coming to Toms River, not because we won a Little League World Series. It's because now we have the most inclusive special need complex for anybody of any age, of any disability in the country. There are playgrounds like this. There are complexes similar to this, but there isn't one that lives and breathes and does everything for anyone of any age.
Christian Kane. Everyone may know the expression Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner.
Oh, yeah.
This may be a much more significant Field of Dreams in Toms River. We thank you.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
wish you all
Steve.
the best.
Thank you.
This is Think Tank. I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.
To see more Think Tank with Steve Adubato programs and to listen to Think Tank with Steve Adubato, the podcast, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, Ph.D. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Think Tank is pleased to welcome Linda Czipo, who's President and CEO, Center for Nonprofits. Good to see you, Linda.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You and I have had many conversations over the years. To disclose, Caucus Educational Corporation, our production company, a nonprofit. NJTV, our production partners, nonprofits. You deal with all kinds of nonprofits. You recently did a survey of not-for-profits. What are they telling you about the current environment we're in nationally?
It's a challenging time for nonprofits. What we're seeing is that demand for the services nonprofits provide keeps going up, but the resources that nonprofits need to meet that demand aren't keeping pace. And this is a gap that's been going on for years, and it's not getting any easier.
Describe the need a little bit more. In what areas?
A lot of human service organizations think about building affordable homes or dealing with people with food insecurity. When the government shut down in January, nonprofits stepped in a big way. People turn to nonprofits for all sorts of things, and they assume that nonprofits are going to be there to be able to meet those needs.
Federal government, through the President Trump and the Republicans, made significant changes in tax policy. They have argued that it has fueled the economy, that there's more money in people's pockets than ever before. What impact does your survey tell you, and what do you hear from your not-for-profit organizations about the impact of federal tax changes on not-for-profits?
I would say overall the tax changes have made an already challenging environment for nonprofits even more difficult overall, because the biggest change that affects nonprofits is the deductibility of charitable gifts. They tax law by doubling the standard deduction means fewer people can itemize on their tax returns, and the charitable deduction is only available if you itemize on your tax return. So instead of 35% of households taking that charitable deduction because they could itemize, only the top 10% really have it available.
Linda, you seem to be saying that the pool of people who could potentially contribute to nonprofits is getting smaller.
At least the people who can get a tax deduction for doing it. It's more expensive now to give to charity unless you're in the top 10%.
That's so interesting. Let me try this. For those who really question the role of nonprofits, I mean, put it this way. It's not about us, but we spend a lot of our time raising money, or we wouldn't be in this studio right now. And there are corporations and foundations and others who believe in what we're doing. That case, someone says, well, so what, whether there's public television or not? And some people may not care. But with you and your colleagues, we have to make our case. The point I'm asking, the point I'm trying to get to is, how do you teach your colleagues to make the case that they're incredibly important? Because 10% of all the private jobs are in not-for-profits.
And that's one of the first things that we like to point out, because people don't realize that nonprofits are, it's not just about the really important and really good services that nonprofits provide. And, don't get me wrong, everybody in some way, shape, or form has been touched beneficially by a nonprofit.
Do people not realize sometimes they say, oh, it's charitable work?
Yeah.
It's way more than that.
It's way more than that. If you watch public television, if you go to the theater, if you go to a park and it's clean, if you benefit from
How about people working to clean the ocean?
Absolutely.
Not for profits.
Exactly. Protecting our civil rights. All sorts of things. Again, having good, clean communities, having a safe space for your kids to be after school. All of these things are related, and so many more are related to nonprofits. Disaster response. You can go on and on
Think
and on.
about the disasters that we've had in this country, Puerto Rico in this country. Not-for-profits. I mean, think of Red Cross, right? Not-profit.
Absolutely.
And a whole range of other rescue organizations, relief organizations. Let me try this one. I'm curious about this. Your survey also found that most of the nonprofits you deal with are saying that the demand will rise. Why?
Some of it's a question of the economy, the wealth
Demand
gap.
for services.
Demand for services,
Go ahead,
yes.
Sorry.
It's a question of the economy. Here in New Jersey, it's cost of living is especially high, but this is across the country. This is happening, where you've got a wealth gap, where the recovery is not reaching significant portions of the population, and it's just nonprofits have been seeing this over and over. And part of this is also related to the resource gap. That nonprofits can't; they're not able to generate the resources. The resources aren't coming in to meet that demand.
Think Tank is not a quote-unquote political show, but political ideology matters when it comes to policy. And there's policy that impacts nonprofits. Here's the question. President Trump has had some experience with nonprofits. He's had a foundation. The foundation is clearly under investigation, I believe, by the New York Attorney General's office and others, and maybe the Southern District of New York as well. Here's my question. To what degree do you believe President Trump understands the role of nonprofits beyond the charitable work that his foundation has done, some of it really good work, but there are questions about his foundation? To what degree do you think he understands nonprofits and the role?
It's hard to say. I can't speak for him, obviously, but I do think it's important to impress upon the administration how the policies that they are championing affect the ability of nonprofits to meet needs.
Do you think they think about that?
It's hard to say. I certainly think more needs to happen to change some of those policies to make it easier for nonprofits to do that work.
Time we have left, the role of the Center for Nonprofits. Tell folks what exactly you do. Let's put up our team is always 2 steps ahead of me. Let's put up the website for the center. Go ahead.
Center for Nonprofits is a statewide umbrella organization providing education, advocacy services for the nonprofit community. We're a champion and a resource for and about New Jersey's charitable community.
When you say advocacy, what does that mean?
It means public policy. It means things like trying to promote policies that will make it possible for nonprofits to do the work. Things like a tax deduction for charitable giving, trying to broaden that so that everybody who gives to charity can receive a tax deduction.
But that's on a state level. Can state policies supersede federal policies in this area?
We actually need that on both levels. We need the federal tax deduction to be broadened so that everybody who gives to charity can deduct.
What about on the state level? What do we need?
Right now, we need that too, because we don't have a state tax incentive for charitable giving, unlike some of our neighbors in New York and in Delaware, which have that, and in 40-some-odd other states.
Linda Czipo is the president and the chief executive officer of the Center for Nonprofits. We appreciate you joining us on Think Tank.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's it for this edition. For everyone at Think Tank, I'm Steve Adubato. We thank you so much for watching, but most importantly, make sure that you think for yourself. See you next time. Thank you, Linda.
Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been provided by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Investors Bank, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community, United Airlines, the Fidelco Group, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Did you know LGBTQ youth are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight peers? All youth deserve to feel safe. All youth deserve to feel their life is worth living. Bullying contributes significantly to how LGBTQ youth feel about themselves. A rainbow's colors makes its beauty, and our diversity makes our communities vibrant. Bullying lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer youth dims your light. Be an upstander and stop bullying.